Yeah, no, it's almost. I know part of this, but.
Is it unmasked because if you're sufficiently distanced and protected? I think you're sufficiently distanced and protected from me. So let me call this, are we all set? I'm sorry. Yeah. Regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Today is Tuesday, October 20th. We are in the City Hall auditorium. It is now 5:01 p.m. Before we begin the meeting, could we stand and pledge the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Jumping into item number 1, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the regular meeting held August 18th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. So I heard Mr. Reyes and Mr. Wright. Questions on the minutes or the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? An abstention. All right, so an abstention would be from Mr. Anderson and from Ms. Pesky. All right, item 2, I'll entertain a motion to approve the IT director's request. Where to rephrase this? Catch it before I. I'll entertain a motion to waive the bid process and approve the IT director's request to enter into a multi-year contract with a managed detection and response provider, Red Canary of Denver, Colorado, from October 30th, 2020 through June 29th, 2024, for a total amount of $104,632 to improve the cybersecurity posture of the city of Torrington against existing and emerging malicious cyber attacks. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and I heard Ms. Pesky. So the floor is open. Jay is here. I know. Did all of you call in last time to get a chance to read?
I didn't get to, but I read about these guys.
All right. Jerry, do you want to just give the highlights on what we're doing and why we're doing it?
Sure. We have, as part of our Microsoft agreement, we already utilize tools provided by Microsoft to protect our endpoints, but those are very static in the sense that they're just looking for files and looking for malicious files. What Red Canary does is they partner with Carbon Black, which is an endpoint detection response tool that provides a bunch of telemetry data from our workstations, our endpoints, and allows Carbon Black as a managed provider to view that data and actually see if there's any processes that are actually running in real time that might be potentially a threat. So it takes it, we're not looking at files like your traditional virus scan, we're actually looking at things that are running on the machine that shouldn't be running, that could pose a risk. So that's the purpose of this this engagement, is to try to get that level of protection, which we didn't have before with their existing tools. And protection in general is, we're learning, it has to be a multi-layered approach. We have to look at it from different vectors, and this is, again, one form of surveillance that we don't have right now.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'm sorry, I missed it last night, but is this for the entire city, or?
Yeah, so this is for all.
Board of Ed too?
The Board of Ed has their own solution. This is for the city, the city's endpoints, which are desktops, laptops, servers, and the idea is that we're going to protect our assets. It would also facilitate us or help us protect our assets. And, we do communicate with other departments, such as the school system. We have a shared financial system with them. So they communicate with us over the network. It would help us, gain some protection, if something happened on their end. But it does not cover, we're not paying for the monitoring of their devices.
This may be a stupid question, but if you're doing Zoom meetings, for instance, and people are logged down with their own computers, is this also extend and protect?
No, it doesn't deal with that.
What about the email, the city email that we all have?
Yeah, so we have email through Microsoft. They're providing email through Office 365 for a bunch of our user accounts right now. We still have some that need to get migrated up to their services, but we're using the tools that are built in with those servers, to manage and protect email. Where Carbon Black and Red Canary might come into place is if there is a bad file that happens to get through email, the protection that's built in the email, and then it gets executed on the machine. This service is going to help detect that execution as it's running and give us an opportunity to stop it in its tracks.
Part of the discussion last night was why waiving the bid process?
They're a company that we're already involved with from an incident that happened a few months ago. So we're actually using, they came recommended from the law firm that we were working with and the forensics team. They came hot.
And the insurance company?
Yeah, so what, immediately when we learned that there was an incident or event that would require a larger scale response, we contacted our insurance. We do have cyber insurance. The insurance company immediately helped us assemble this team, lawyer, Trace Point, Red Canary, Carbon Black was implemented. The key to all of this was to assemble a team that could be mobilized immediately. So that event occurred, what was the date? Was it August?
It was August, middle of August.
Yeah. And within 3 days of us learning of the event, this team was assembled for us. They are IT specialists recognized across the nation. As a matter of fact, Trace Point was one of the forensic IT specialists that were brought in. 3 of them were flown in.
Yep.
While they were here, there was another hacking event somewhere else in the country, and 2 of them were redeployed to another section of the country. So these are the experts that I think are recognized in their field rather strongly across the nation. Red Canary has experience with us. We've been working with them. They're familiar with the network that we have set up here. They recognize that we're not just talking about those endpoints that are here in City Hall. We have WPCA, we have the street department, we have the recreation department, police department, fire department. We interface with Litchfield County Dispatch. And then that we share a software and connection points with the Board of Education and the finance system. So they're really already up to speed on what we are and who we are. And the other sense of urgency that we have in this, because that team was assembled for a 45-day period of time. So here we are post 45 days heading into an election where there's also a heightened sense of awareness that there can be cyber attacks, that could be lodged. So it just made sense for us to pursue the resources that were brought to bear for us, but not without doing a little bit of due diligence. And that's when Jerry went into the research to do a comparable cost analysis. And if you want to talk a little
Yes, I looked at similar solutions since we are a Microsoft shop. I looked at the offerings that they had, did some price comparisons with their solutions versus Red Canary, and there was a large differential. Microsoft was much more expensive. So we felt that we were getting a very good value for the service that they were providing and the tools they're utilizing. Everything we've seen so far has been very positive. The deployment of the software is very, very easy. They were able to do that in a matter of hours. And going through their interfaces and looking at the management of the tools, again, very straightforward, very easy to manage. So I'm very pleased with the product so far.
And the question was brought up last night, the length of this contract seems a little bit long for a new vendor and particularly since we haven't, didn't go out to bid.
Right. You can go month to month, year contract, 2 years, 3 years. So we get the best discount going, with a large multi-year contract. For me, this is not I don't look at this type of solution, whatever it is something that we want to, buy one product today, switch over to another product, 6 months from now. We'd like to, get some consistency, because with consistency, we can be able to determine patterns, how our network operates, determine, what false positives may pop up. So the consistency is what we're looking for as well in the solution.
Mary, this is not to be a contingency.
So it's not the full $104,000 upfront. It is, it will be billed annually over the 4-year term of the contract. So the first installment would come out of is it the disaster recovery fund that we established? Okay.
So Jerry, you mentioned that the Board of Ed has their own solution.
Yep.
I guess what stands out in my mind is something like this, looking at all the computers that the city and the Board of Ed are responsible for. To me, this jumps out as another opportunity for a shared service that we should be looking at. Is without looking at the red, the black, or whatever that is, the Red Canary, is it offering the same level of protection and the same type of protection that the Board of Ed service put into place?
There's a difference. I did talk to the Board of Ed to, before we actually, got too far into this, to see what solutions they were using as I was trying to do some research. They're using the same product in terms of the agent that sits on a machine and provides the telemetry data. The difference is all that data goes to an interface on a server that they manage, that they need to go into, analyze that data. They need to spend a considerable amount of time configuring that and and managing it. So
sorry, when you say they, is that the Board of Ed?
Board of Ed. So Red Canary is an entity that will do a lot of that work for us, provide that oversight and that management, provide the alerts to us, after they've filtered through, any false positives, and then present that information to us as this is an actionable, item that we should look at.
So if I may speak to that as well. As you know, with the 104,632 for a 4-year period of time, it's a little over $25,000 a year. This is in lieu of us hiring somebody who would be sitting doing nothing but evaluating and assessing all of that data, which would require a full-time employee. We can't get somebody in here for $25,000. So we do look at this as a significant cost savings, as opposed to us trying to do this ourselves. Our IT department is 3 full-time employees. To undertake this would require another full-time, potentially 1.5-time employee. So, and the only other little bit of information that I think might be helpful is you heard us say that Carbon Black is the software. What we did learn through this is that the Board of Education is already using Carbon Black. They're
using Carbon Black, but they're doing their own management versus us partnering with a company like Red Canary.
And that makes sense, and it's maybe less pertinent to today's motion, but if city and Board of Ed are both using the same software and a comparable product, it just seems like this would be a good opportunity to look at maybe on renewal to see if there could be some cost savings if we combined our efforts. We need to be looking at ways that the city and the Board of Ed overlap. The budgeting and separate budgets is easy enough to handle on paper, but we've got to be looking at joining forces. I mean, we're playing for the same team.
Absolutely.
So we shouldn't have 2 contracts with the same vendor, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that Carbon Black is that type of license that does probably require an annual renewal. We can certainly reach out to the Board of Education.
Yeah, it's really 2 components. There's a Carbon Black software, So both the Board of Ed and the city are both buying that software, and then the school system, the Board of Ed is, the layer they're at is, the server interface that they manage, where we're paying for Carbon Black to do that management for us. One of my large concern that I have is that, if we took the same model that the Board of Ed did, if we don't give it enough attention, something slips by. I mean, that's, we don't want to have that happen. Yeah.
And our strategy in looking at all of this and determining what is the most responsible thing to do with bringing all of these resources to bear in a timely fashion. I mentioned that we have this, the election coming up, and there's a heightened awareness of cyber attacks. But we also know is based on the fact that we experienced this once already, we want to demonstrate to our insurance company that we have done everything in our power to ensure that it won't happen again. And this, I think, is that those layers of resources that they would be looking to us to implement.
Did that come into play, what the insurance company was looking for versus the company that you went with?
They certainly wouldn't tell us that this was, a recommended vendor. They don't do that. But the fact that they brought these vendors to us in such I want to say it was 48 hours in that 24 hours for them to, be able to do the trial and get to us. But that I think speaks volumes. So.
Yeah, and working with the technicians that were out on site, I mean, they had nothing but great things to say about this product. I mean, they use it in other engagements, hands down. I'd mentioned some other, solutions, and they were, very positive about this product and this, combination, with this company.
The numbers were staggering. The 216 million pieces of data that they were going to interrupt.
Yeah.
But then even getting down to that there was one very serious threat a month, they would say, that's using other places. That tends to happen.
Yeah, and the risks are evolving. I mean, they're, the threat actors are making it more difficult because it's not like they're building their own little custom piece of software to go do something that you can easily detect and identify. They're using your own tools against you. So now it gets even more difficult because you've got to look at the processes that are running on the machine. That software that's Microsoft software, for instance, that may normally run, but how is it being used? Is it doing something out of the ordinary? So those are the kinds of things that we need. I feel like Red Canary can provide that expertise for us.
The other thing that we learned through all of this is that the introduction of this malware can come from anywhere. As we switched from during the pandemic, a response where you're working remotely, you have more people logging in, you're increasing the risk that it can happen through a login from a remote location. People may be relying on thumb drives. I know there was a bid that we put out there, and people were submitting the bids instead of packages being mailed. They were submitting them on thumb drives. It can be introduced into your system through a thumb drive. So these are the challenges that this is ever evolving. And no matter how prepared you are to try to get ahead of it, they're finding ways to be ahead of you. So I do think that this is a really cost-effective way for us to shore up some of those. And I'm hearing everything that Mr. Anderson is saying about sharing services and making sure that we're, we're getting the economies of scale through mutual purchases. I agree, and I'm sure that the Board of Education would welcome that information. Although this was one time, I'm sure they felt they were really glad that their system was separate from ours.
Yeah.
But we do know that this is an important step for us to be taking.
Right, and I think we also want to, provide for them the confidence that they can, interface with our network.
Especially the stuff, especially the financial stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand the start date. Us needing to get on this as soon as possible. It's just odd that the end date is not the last day in June. It's
June 29th.
it's June 29th. And I don't know if that matters, Alice, in terms of our budgeting, not really.
Yeah, I don't,
I'm wondering if June 29th is a weekday and
It's a Tuesday.
Oh, so there goes that theory.
It's strange, so.
Well, we could amend it to make it June 30th.
yeah.
If it doesn't matter, then I don't care. I just found it odd.
On the letter, it has June 30th. It has the wrong year, but it has June 30th. on the letter.
See, I was thinking it was on the Mayan calendar. Whoa, yeah. In either event, that's an easy fix.
All right, if there are, final call for questions for Jerry on the motion. All right, if there are no other comments, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the fiscal year 2019-2020 transfer requests and budget amendments described in the city controller's memo dated October 6, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. And second by Mr. Davis. Questions on the memo or on the transfers?
I see a lot of disaster recovery fund in its ins and outs here, so that's probably, I don't know, this is that. That's probably a majority of this, right, Alice?
It is in response to the issue that we had, but it's also additional funding that we want to put in that fund if we need to get new equipment or additional software to create protection in response to this issue.
Okay, yeah, so those are all just line items that we thought would be better be made available in the disaster recovery fund.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And then for the veteran board of finance members, I'm trying to think of how many years Jerry Rollett kept asking us for a disaster recovery fund. If there's a really bad storm and there are extraordinary expenses, he always wanted to have that, that line item that would provide for resources. If you had to do a large scale storm debris removal and stuff like that. So I like the idea of this disaster recovery fund. And I think that it's timely.
So is that
But
fund?
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's good. So that fund totals 425 right now?
The disaster recovery fund?
Yeah, what is that?
No, the total of the transfers that'll be going into that fund are about 200,000.
Okay. Just trying to find that number. Okay.
That's last fiscal year though, and now this happened this fiscal.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, she just, last year's 1920.
so the money would be something that would carry over?
It'll be housed in that fund and it will stay
And
there.
it will
Correct.
Yeah, it's all just 1920. Is there a 1920 fund still?
Yeah. As Alice said, it's essentially a sinking fund. It's a capital reserve.
Yeah,
So
I think it's wise.
And with the projected year-end surpluses that we have, this was the year that we felt it would be relatively easy to create this and fund it.
I think we have many disasters that come up throughout this year, so it's timely, that's for sure.
I think we met our quota.
Yeah, I think so.
Exceeded our quota. All right, other questions on the transfers? Any other questions in regard to any of the other transfers?
The City Hall renovation,
Mhm.
we're still
After this transfer, there is still $165,000 deficit in that fund. I could come in front of the boards and ask for an additional transfer out of 1920 because 1920 is healthy enough to be able to absorb that, but I didn't want to overreach. So if the board would like for me to do that at the next meeting and make that presentation, I will certainly do that so we can eliminate that negative balance in that City Hall renovation fund.
If we're in a good place, I think.
Just right now.
Yeah, if the year end for 1920 is that healthy of a surplus, then
Okay, I will do that at the next meeting. I'll present that. Okay, thank you. We're good? Thank you.
Last call, more questions?
That's all. We don't heard that in a while.
All right, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Any opposed?
Motion carries. Item 4, I'll entertain a motion to accept the financial reports relating to the 2019-2020 bonded projects.
So moved.
second.
Thank you, Mary. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Bates. Thank you. All right, questions on this report? Another thing I would share with you is we are moving along, I think, at a fairly good rate on getting some of the management projects done, maybe even more than we anticipated being able to get done. Before we proceed with the next round of bond sales, I think what we'll do is we'll ask Ray Drew and Paul Cousins to come before the board just to talk about, are we going at, a pace that we can maintain or sustain? Are we at a point where maybe we're not trying to do all $40 million in 5 years? Maybe we're looking to stretch it out a little bit longer. Because this is an incredible amount of work between engineering and testing and being on site. So feeling comfortable with where we are, feeling accomplished, to be honest with where we are. Of course, I think our taxpayers all thought that the roads would be done in a year.
Yeah.
So not quite as fast as everybody would like to see it happen. But I have to give credit to our public works department because I think they've really been doing an amazing job with the amount of road work that they've done.
And I think the weather this summer was really conducive to getting all that done.
Absolutely.
Because it seemed like the places that were being done were not torn up that terribly long.
Yes.
Some more than others. The ones that are going all the way down. That takes longer, but I seem to have to drive on for some reason.
It was a pretty mild winter too, so I think they started a little bit earlier than they normally do, and they're still going out.
Later into the fall, ready to start a little earlier in the spring. There was also a new process that was introduced through this payment management, where it's a pulled in place mill and relay. And that's a process that works best on, a relatively straight level road. So wherever the engineering department was able to identify that there was a stretch of road, more than a mile, that they could do that in. They did. This was the first year that they implemented that, and they were very pleased with the way that came out. I think everybody, even the property owners on those roads, were grateful because that was a very fast. They set up, go for the weekend, they come in on Monday, by Friday of the week, they're in the road. So that was a really big win. Some of the other projects that they were able to get done in this most recent round of pavement is the new parking lot and drive at the North End Fire Station. I think they're working at the police department. And at the senior center. And again, the users in those locations are really grateful to see that the investments are being made and they're not driving out of their way to avoid major potholes and stuff like that, so.
I think that meeting would be beneficial with Paul and, yeah. Sorry.
I know how old people
Said throw back into those. Yeah, so I think that would be a beneficial meeting, just to kind of, see where we've progressed so far in that package, how much we've spent so far, how much we have left to spend, and how long it's gonna take to, to finish everything up.
I think it's an opportunity for them to brag a little bit, but also for us to really, evaluate, some of the work that we're doing and what's a reasonable expectation for continuing the work. And I will also share, it's an opportunity for us to talk about what's going on with the animal control facility, because in this bonding package that we did, or the referendum that approved this bonding, we were expecting the animal control facility to come in somewhere around $1 million, and the bids came in closer to $2 million. So we're at an impasse on what to do with this animal control facility, and I think we have to make some decisions as to how we move that project forward, because we really can't leave it the way that it is. So I'm going to try to work on some strategies and ideas as to what we should do with that.
Was there some private sector people that were looking into raising some money on that?
Actually, our animal control officer felt that she could do some fundraising. She has like 8,000 followers on that Facebook page. She thought if they each gave $100, she'd be able to fill the gap. And people are crazy about their animals. She might not be too far off, but I think there are a couple of ideas as to how we can maybe move that forward. But it is something that I'd like to address, maybe strategize over the winter so that we can decide in spring, how do we get that project completed. So I guess we're still talking about the 9-10. I don't know why I crossed off item 5. We haven't had it yet. So I'm going to call a motion on item 4 if there are no other questions. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now item 5. I'll entertain a motion to accept the Board of Education financial reports. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Second.
And second, Mr. Bass. Questions on the reports or comments? I was tuning into the Board of Ed meeting, I think it was a budget meeting last week, and they were talking about how their year is going, and their line items are trending really positively, which is something they're not accustomed to. Even through the pandemic, I think they were pleasantly surprised at where they were. Don't know how sustainable it is, but all right, I'll call this motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and 6, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the department heads.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Pesky and Mr. Bass. All in favor? Any opposed? Alice, anything you want to add this evening?
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Anything from the state clerk's office?
Just give you a quick update on the absentee ballots. So I didn't run a report for today yet, but yesterday we were very close to 5,000 absentee ballots issued. I believe we've reached 5,000 after today, with over 3,000 of them already returned to us. So to put that into perspective, in 2016, there was just over 1,000 absentee ballots that were returned to us. So we're already 3 times that, probably on pace for 4 or 5 times that number. So yeah, we've been pretty busy in our city clerk's office.
Do you need volunteers, Sean? Is there a need for people to help?
At this point,
Yes, Kelly Anderson, yes.
yeah, I'll tell, sure, are you interested?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you all know. at this point, we're kind of at a manageable pace. The applications for new absentee ballots are coming in much slower. At this point, it's more receiving in the ballots that have already been sent out. So it's becoming more and more manageable every day. I'll let Carol know you're interested.
Until it comes time to count them.
Yeah.
With the absentee, they're just ripped open and fed through the machine to be counted, right?
The registrar's team has a whole process for that on election day. I mean, there's the two envelopes that both need to be opened. I think there's counting at multiple levels to make sure that nothing goes missing. Yeah, and then eventually they're fed through the scanner.
In anticipation of this volume of ballots that are happening in this way, what Carol Anderson and Nan Guccio did is they reached out to the Board of Education because they ordinarily do this in the conference room here on the second floor, which is very small and pretty cramped. So they're actually going to be doing this out at the Vogel Wetmore School. And when you say you may be interested in volunteering, I'm not sure if that's, that's a location where they might be looking for more volunteers to do that. The double check, triple check before you feed it through the scanner. All right, item 7, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
And Mr. Anderson, all in favor? Any opposed? Starting from my right, Ms. Pesky.
Since I wasn't here in August, this is my first time back in at a live meeting, and it's nice to see everybody. Thank you.
It's
For
a
setting
different
it all up and keeping us safe.
No, we appreciate that everybody was flexible enough to join us, whether it's in person or continue by Zoom. Mr. Anderson?
One trivial correction. I had said that June 29th was a Tuesday. That's in 2021. In 2024, it's a Sunday. But that still doesn't matter.
Still doesn't.
I'm coming off a tax deadline, so everything has to be right.
Oh.
No, the only thing I would add is, while everyone's still adjusting to the post-COVID world, I mean, our local nonprofits they still need help. On a personal note, this Sunday, the 25th, Cub Scout Pack 3 is still having their annual penny auction fundraiser at the Elks Club. They've extended the hours from 2 to 5, and they have a whole plan to make it as COVID compliant as possible. So if anyone's available, we'd love to see them. It gets really in help.
Mr. Rice?
I don't have much. I give a lot of credit to the city clerk's office and everybody that's been working here throughout this, and the mayor's office having to put out one fire after another. So, happy to be here and, looking forward to moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
No, I'm good.
I'll just give you a couple of quick updates on some projects that we have, because I know as a Board of Finance, when you're reviewing all of these expense reports that you get, knowing that the real win for us to budget properly or budget plan better for taxes is to grow the grand list. So on that front, we are still working with Penrose on the development on Franklin Street. We should have the land lease executed with them hopefully by the end of the month, and I hope to see a shovel on the ground before Thanksgiving, but certainly before the end of the year. With that right now, if you drive by that location, you'll see that we have Red Technologies on location doing the last little bit of cleanup on that property. And the good news is that cleanup, the cost came in significantly lower than we thought. So we were working with almost $800,000 left on the name of the grant the state gave us. Hopefully we'll be in a position after the cleanup is complete that we may be in a position where we're actually returning money to the state. I saw David Lehman, Commissioner, DECD Commissioner last week, and mentioned to him that we might be in a position to be able to do this, but I wanted to be able to do it with a lot of pomp and circumstance, because I don't think it ever happens, and he said, wait, you need to tell me this again, because no, this never happens. People are usually coming back asking for more because the costs were higher than they anticipated. The other win with that grant, which we were sharing with Commissioner Landon, was it was $1 million grant that the state gave to us. We were very fiscally responsible with it. And what we're returning is any surplus that we may have, but we're also returning a $20 million housing project that was built into that original grant. When we were granted that money, the expectation was we were going to clean up what we could clean up. We were going to attract housing development, and we would get another greenway built as a part of that. We're returning out of all of those promises. It's a big win for the city, and I don't mind saying, I'm a little shameless when I say, and when we give that back to you, we'll probably have the other hand out looking for that next round of funding, because we did just submit a pre-application for more grant funding to assist IRG that owns the Standard plant and the Excelsior building on Field Street and on North Elm Street. So we're trying to do everything that we can to position that property in order to clean that property up for further development. The Hendy location, another grant opportunity, another grant recipient. The state has invested $500,000 in assessment work and remediation work. And what we're showing to the state a return on that investment is that property has turned over to a manufacturer who is bringing manufacturing into the city with an expectation that it's somewhere between 100 and 200 new jobs to the city. So pleased that the city of Torrington is showing a big ROI on the state's investments in us. And I hope that they'll recognize that when we ask for more. So the only other thing I was going to add is we will meet again in November, but that will be very close to all of our holiday plannings. We are still looking at how we're going to be able to open Christmas Village safely. You know, how we're going to redesign any of our Light of Maine, the Christmas parade, all of those things, recognizing that social distancing is obviously even more important given the little uptick in some of the cases that we're seeing across the state. Although I read in today's newspaper about the arrest in Waterbury for the guy that wasn't wearing a mask. And I thought, oh. So we really have to be very careful on what we do with our holiday plans, but certainly don't want to cancel Christmas. So we're working on that, and I'll share more information at the next meeting. Right, if there are no questions, then
I do have.
you do.
The city council last night approved ordinance to allow
Yes.
alcohol,
Yes.
which I'm kind of hoping, I gotta tell you, that a lot of the changes that have come about that have allowed restaurants to do different things. And I don't think the world has come to an end because of that. People have been very responsible as far as I can tell, and I haven't seen a lot, and I get through newspapers, so. So I was pleased, and there didn't seem to be any, your public hearing didn't have any.
No public comment. I kind of feel a few years ago when we were facing the same question about whether or not beer permits should be allowed at Fusenich Park. I think that the introduction of the possibility that our public spaces could be positioned to allow for alcohol permitting very responsibly. And with Franklin Street, yeah, that was the whole thought is, you know, when you go to Collinsville during the holidays and they have a sip and stroll. Or if there's a fundraiser that includes an Oktoberfest or a beer garden or a wine tasting, that's a location that's so easily controlled. And it's all permit driven. So I'm pleased that we didn't get a whole lot of pushback on it, any pushback on it. And I think you're right. With those buildings on Franklin Plaza now having back doors that can be front doors, it's a great opportunity for them. One of the other things, now that you mentioned last night's meeting, when I was talking about growing our grant list, what we've seen over the last 4 months is an incredible uptick in property sales and refinances. The inventory of houses that are on the market has been significantly reduced. People are putting their house on the market on Monday and they have a contract by Friday. In some cases, there are bidding wars for the property. And our building report, the building permit report, clearly showed that that even if it wasn't the sale that resulted in somebody coming in and investing in the property by improving it, it was the refinancing because the interest rates are so low where people were making significant improvements. And the the value of the building projects in September of 2019 were somewhere around 2.3 million, but in September of 2020, it was in excess of 4 million. So when we talk about our grand list, sometimes we get so focused on those big, jumps in the grand list with a housing project or a new manufacturer. Sometimes it comes in those little steps where it's somebody that redid their kitchen, put in a new roof or new windows, that improves the property values, that also increases the values. So it's positive news that we hope can be sustained through the winter and whatever the economy looks like, coming out of the pandemic.
May I ask Alex one question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The audit.
Yes.
Are the folks coming here? How does that work?
We've actually been doing most of it remotely, scanning, sending the documents, communications back and forth. And so far it's worked well. They did go over to the Board of Education for a week, but because of the fact that even in prior years, a lot of what we've done with them has been through email and through that type of a communication, we haven't run into any issues with handling it remotely this year.
Thank you.
No questions? No questions? Want to do a motion to adjourn? Guys, all in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all. Enjoy your Halloween. And election day.